Hi, everyone, and welcome to the CPA MOMS podcast. I'm your host, Nicole. I'm the brand ambassador of CPA MOMS, and today is the most undervalued skill in accounting. I am chatting with Mayumi Young, my dear friend and the founder of CPA MOMS. Thank you for being here with me today, Mayumi. I want to dig into a topic that I believe is the most undervalued skill in accounting: confidence. Imposter syndrome is real, and I believe that why both men and women experience it at times, it definitely seems to show up more in women. Have you ever felt like you had to prove yourself more than your male counterparts?
Yes, 100%. Probably even still, it's there in the background. I don't know that it ever goes away. Um, and I and I think as women, um, there's always this kind of comparison that happens. Actually, I'll share briefly a little distinction that I learned. I've done a lot of personal and professional development over the last 25 years. And one of the programs that I took was designed for women to teach women the design of men and the design of women to empower those relationships. And in that program, there was a distinction that every woman has what they described as an ideal woman in our brain that we've concocted.
Mm.
And we've put her together from our childhood and the Disney movies and media and watching parents and just cobbled together the perfect woman. And she dresses perfectly. She always says the perfect thing. She always does the perfect thing. She's perfect. And we spend our whole life comparing ourselves to this woman only to, basically feel like we just never measure up to this woman. And so um the reality is we like to do the comparison thing. And whether we're comparing ourselves to men or, and we do that because in the workplace that happens a lot, this sort of, trying to compete and compare with men, or we're trying to compare ourselves to this ideal woman that we've concocted. We're almost always failing in relationship to that. Comparison in general is a very ineffective, unproductive way to go
Mhm.
through life. Um, but it doesn't mean that there isn't that part of me and our brains that consider it. Now, I don't give it a voice anymore. I did in the early stages of my career. Um, but the thought gets to be there without the thought having me. I have the thought.
So then, do you think that that whole comparison is the reason that women in accounting often doubt themselves, even when they are highly capable?
I don't think that's the only reason.
Okay.
I think it's certainly part of it. And I don't think we're just comparing ourselves to men anymore. I think we're comparing ourselves to other
Mm.
women, now that there are more women in the industry. Um, and I feel like, and I say this a lot, anyone's heard me speak understands that I just feel like the accounting profession was not designed for women. It was designed by men for men 100 plus years ago, and it wasn't designed for women. And so the reason I think a lot of us feel like we aren't measuring up is because the game is not, I don't want to say rigged because that implies there's some consciousness that went into like trying to have us feel less than. And there's no consciousness. No one's out to get us, but it's designed for something that's generally not a match for what's important to us. And it is not designed for us to feel confident in who we are or the contributions that we can make. I think the other piece that comes in is then that breeds this ground of perfectionism. And And I think when I compare, and I've worked with men and women, when I compare how women approach the same job as a man, there's this sense of like, I have to prove that I'm worthy first. And I have to wait until I can do 100% before applying for a promotion or before I step into that role. Like somehow you have to be perfect before you're qualified to do something, whereas a lot of men are just like, I'm winging it. They fake it till they make it. And they don't say that they're faking it. They'll talk like they've been doing it forever, that they know everything. And it's not, it's they're not lying. They're not lying, but it's totally different. Men and women are wired differently. And I believe that they genuinely understand and appreciate and are confident that they'll figure it out. So, and I think we forget as women that most of everything we've ever accomplished is because we figured it out. And so why figure it out before going for the promotion or launching your own practice or whatever? Why are you waiting to be perfectly ready? Because there's no such time as being ready. It's like saying, oh, wait till you're the perfect mother before you have a baby. Like, how's that going to work out? That's not going to work out for you. You're never going to be ready. And so I think it just reinforces this idea of self-doubt, this sort of perfectionism and the feeling or a belief and limited belief that says, you have to be overqualified before you're qualified and before you're ready. I also think that there's a lack of good role models and examples. I think I look often out to see um, examples. I like having examples because it gives me a sense of what's possible. And I'm like, if I look at somebody who's been successful and I think about their trajectory or their skill sets, and generally when I look, I'm like, I can do that. I've got as much skill. I've got more background than I got, and so you start to get confidence because you see that people who may be less qualified for you are doing the job that you don't even feel like you're qualified for, and then you start to question and challenge your belief systems. But I think that there's still an insufficient there's a lack of representation in leadership. I beat this drum a lot, but our industry is over 60% female, but less than 10% of owners and partners are women. And when leadership doesn't reflect you, when you don't see professional working mothers that have both a career and a family, or they're taking partnership or ownership, or women of color, or diverse role models in senior roles, it becomes harder and harder to believe that it's possible for you. And so, that can erode at your own self-belief. And I think that it's important to continue to, um, have women represented in leadership. And I think also a design piece of women is this idea of in a culture of quiet competence. um I was rewarded a lot for being someone who worked really hard and was really assertive. As you can tell, I'm a very direct person. I'm very expressed, and I'm not sort of the typical avatar of a woman in accounting. And I speak up. I was even called a loose cannon in my first public accounting job. I got somebody wrote in my comments in my one of my evaluations that I was a loose cannon. We've gotten the B word, we've gotten all kinds of things when women are assertive and take command in the industry. And it really eroded at my confidence for years and feeling I'm not doing it right. And it took me a long time to reconcile who I am and realizing that problem was over there with that person. That, I was being authentically me, and I was not afraid to promote myself, be self-promoting, which is not arrogance. Um, and what happens a lot is quiet excellence often goes unnoticed.
Mhm.
And when your
Yes.
efforts aren't being recognized, it's easy to question your value, like even if you're doing, really exceptional work. And so, and then you go to mothers in accounting, and that's a whole other like constantly feeling, mom guilt and constantly feeling like you're failing everywhere. And when the system is not designed for women, or it's certainly not for working moms, and doesn't really have a place where you can support both roles, you can really internalize that message that you're failing, and that completely destroys one's confidence. So I think there's a lot of reasons why women feel less confident and are constantly trying to compare ourselves, and mostly just feeling like we're failing.
Yeah. And you touched on, the fine line between being confident and being arrogant. So what would you say is the difference between those two?
Good question. Um, when I'm confident, I'm feeling very grounded and rooted in who I am. Um, Almost kind of like you can kind of feel like if I have roots going from the bottom of my feet down into the center of the earth, just sort of grounding me. And that sense of groundedness comes from a true self-awareness. I've done 25 years of personal and professional development. I've really done an internal assessment of who I am and who I'm not. And I have done that self discovery so that I know who I am. And my mantra is know thyself and to thyself be true. And I've done the reps. And confidence for me comes from doing the work. I think that when I've done the work and I've done the reps, I believe in myself. I believe that I can figure it out even if I don't know it, because I've proven to myself time and time again that I've taken the chance and I've always found a way. And I think confidence is it's almost like a light that shines out, and there's a lot of room and space for other people to shine in around you. It inspires people around you, invokes some level of trust. It invites collaboration. Confidence has a very empowered feeling for the person who exudes confidence and the people who are around the person with confidence. Whereas I feel like an arrogance gives you energetically this feeling of like it's you get kind of repelled by it. It doesn't
Mhm.
draw you in. It's not inviting. It's super inflated, right? And so I would say, and I have had my moments of arrogance for sure. I'd say when I first became an entrepreneur in 2000, I sort of was like, I I was a consultant to Fortune 100 companies, and they didn't know what they were doing, and you know, these corporations, the companies that I was employed by, and my bosses, they didn't know what they were doing, and I knew better. There was this sort of arrogance to I know better. And then when I went on my own, I was like, "Ooh, oh, that's humbling. I actually don't know what I'm doing. There's a whole world of what I don't know that I didn't know." And I got straight real quick. And it just came from not a belief in myself, but from a place of judgment, and two, I would absolutely say from a place of insecurity, because behind that, if I was honest, it was a lot of fear. Like, do I really know what, I don't know what I'm doing. And
Mhm.
so you kind of cover up that fear and that insecurity with arrogance. And I'm better than everyone. People who are declaring some version of I'm better than you, I'm better than everyone, is really internally the most insecure person in the room. And if you're not open to feedback, if you're not collaborative in your approach, and these are all things that just create distance, and so arrogance and confidence are dramatically different. They feel different in your body. They People are drawn to one and repelled by the other. And but the theme though is it comes from within. And when your belief in yourself, you don't have to have proof that you can do it. You just have to believe that it's possible and that you can do it. And my mom instilled that in me early on in my life. She said you could do anything you set your mind to. And I believed her when she said that. So when I went and quit my job, that was very stable and the one that I worked hard to get, and I explained that to my mom, and she went, I went, "You're the one that told me I could do anything I set my mind to." And I set my mind to this, so now I want you to support me. And what could she say to that? Because she convinced me as a child that that was true, and I believed her, and I walk with that belief system. Um, even with the doubts, the confidence is there because I believe in myself.
Beautiful. Great. Now, we've talked about lack of confidence in corporate or in public accounting, and I think that one way this tends to show up in when you own your own firm or practice, or even just as a business owner, any business, really, one of the ways that that can show up is not charging what you're worth. Have you ever hesitated to charge what you're worth? And where do you feel like that comes from?
Oh, I love this question. Oh yes, 120,000%. So I still struggle with it. I mean, the am I worth it conversation never stops. I remember when I was very early as an entrepreneur. So I've been an entrepreneur for since 2000, so 25 years now. And CPA Moms was the third business that I had founded. And when I was getting started, I was so green. I didn't know anything from anything. I didn't know what I was doing at all. And I remember, I can't remember the name of the company that did this, and maybe you'll know. There was this organization that used to do all these events, and they were live. Oh gosh, I'm gonna wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and remember the name of the group. Anyways, they used to do before there was like meetup groups. There was this one group that had all these different workshops and live events, and
Mhm.
they would bring in all these business experts. Anyways, I'll think of it another time. And I remembered before our now president, President Donald Trump was president, he was a business owner, and he was hired by this organization to give a keynote speech or something at one of their big events. And I remember that he was paid $1 million to deliver this speech, to give his talk or whatever. And my brain just couldn't, it like broke something in my brain. I was like, nobody's worth $1 million for a single talk. And it really forced me to challenge this notion of one, trading hours for dollars. Like what is time, like being, well, your value being measured by a unit of time. And then trying to associate your value based on your expertise, what you learned. I'm like, well, what makes his hour of knowledge worth more than other people's hour of knowledge, right? So that math didn't math. And so, really made me start to like really challenge and question the notion of value. We're taught as accountants for a market value is what a willing buyer and seller are willing to transact for. So, what is value really? And in the beginning, my value was measured in time, like most accountants. And so I would design what an hour was, what I felt I should be paid for that hour of time. And because I wasn't privy to what well, I kind of knew what I was being billed out at. I was at um, at Price Waterhouse when I first started. So 30 some odd years ago, I think I was being billed out maybe at $150 an hour to $200 an hour and getting paid less than minimum wage because I wasn't getting overtime and I was working 100 hours a week. And so, you know, using that as a gauge, when I first started out on my own and I launched my own consulting practice, I didn't know what to charge. So I just made up a number. I'm like, $50. And I was like, $50 an hour. And of course, it was an hourly rate at the time. And it was like, sure. And I was like, okay. And I didn't know if that was enough or not enough, or like, but it terrified me to ask for $50 an hour 20 years ago. But as I became more confident in my ability to fulfill and deliver on whatever I promised my clients, then my confidence grew and my rate grew. And then it shifted from hourly to what was I delivering? What was the project that I was fulfilling on? And then I started to recognize that in actually became before value billing was a concept, we created value billing um, in 2009 because I hated having to defend my value to a client based on the hours. And I
Mhm.
wanted to just say, well, what is it that you want the outcome to look like? What is why are you hiring me? What do you want me to produce as an end result? And then pay me what you think it's worth to get that result for you. And because of the way that I shaped my career and my particular set of skills in the industry, I'm more of a triage person. I'm the person who can solve the unsolvable. So I was a really good consultant on really big system problems inside of companies in the accounting space. And so I would start getting, I went from $50 an hour to $50,000 a month, and in a span of not a lot of time, a few years, because I was able to solve problems that cost the company 10 times what they were paying me. And so my formula for my value is now, you know, I'm looking to be paid roughly about 10% of the impact that my contribution is going to have on the company. I'm either going to help them make 10 times more, or I'm going to help them save 10 times as much as they're paying me to solve that problem. And so it 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 has evolved. It started off way differently than where it is now. And I have um but anytime I start something new, I I go back into that, ooh, did I do enough to generate that value? And I have people all around me telling me, why are you charging so little? Why aren't you charging more? And, I still to this day get challenged that I'm not charging enough. And a lot of times I want to make the price point available and affordable for everyone. So I keep it lower than I
Mhm.
know it probably should be. Um, but I'm still a work in process. But yes, to give you a sense, everywhere, all the time, it doesn't go away. But I have a lot of tools that help me overcome it, and a lot of people around me that help me check me around the prices and what I am charging and my sense of value.
Nice. Well, thank you. This has been a great conversation. You have an audience of intelligent, beautiful professional women listening to us right now. Is there anything that you would like to share with them about confidence and showing up in the world confident?
I would say that we have an opportunity to give ourselves more credit. Give yourself more credit. We're so hard on ourselves. We're our
Mhm.
harshest critics. And I think you extend a lot more grace to others than you do for yourself. If you were to talk, if you had a daughter, some of you do, and you spoke to your daughter in the same way that you self talk with yourself, you would never speak to your child in the way that you speak to yourself, ever. And I think that we have to remember that we are probably way more critical about what we actually are successful at. I think whatever you look for, you'll find. So look for the good, look for the ways that you have earned the right. And confidence doesn't come from earning the right. It's not something you earn. Confidence isn't earned, but it is practiced. And it absolutely is something that you could have right now. Right now. Some of you are CPAs and lack confidence in your ability. You did not become a CPA accidentally. That didn't just happen. And you forget because you got the accomplishment that there are a whole lot of people who tried and failed. There are people who wouldn't even endeavor. There are people who flunked out of accounting 101. They were like, not for me. And yet, like, there's this experience of like, I haven't done enough. I don't know enough. And I'm going to challenge that. And my challenge to you would be to go out and find evidence of what you do know, how much more you know than you realize, how much you can do that you realize. Look at all the places, do an inventory of your whole life. When did you not know that you could do it, and then prove to yourself that you could? I don't care, go back to middle school. I don't care, go back to college. There are a lot of examples where you put yourself in a situation where you didn't know how it was going to go and you figured it out and you accomplished it. Every single one of those is another leg under the table. And just like look for evidence that all supports what I believe, which is that you are already good enough, ready, capable enough. And I'll end with this last quote that is one of my favorite quotes of all time. And it was written by, I'll think of it. And it has to do with having a dream or a vision. And basically, the quote is something like, just the mere presence of the desire is evidence of your ability to fulfill on this. So just because you have the desire, you are already seated with all of the things that you need to fulfill on your dream. So if you don't have the confidence yet, borrow Nicole or my confidence in you. Get yourself surrounded around women who can support and empower you and remind you of who you really are. And just know that you can do it. Give yourself some grace.
Yes, yes, that, all of that. I loved that. And I loved what you said about negative self-talk. I actually heard recently someone shared, what if somebody came up to you and they said, here's a human being to take care of your whole life, and you have to take care of this human being its whole life. How would you treat it? Well, you have, that human being is you. Like, you have been given a human being to take care of it. How are you taking care of that human being?
Beautiful.
That is it for today's episode. Thank you so much, Mayumi, for being here and chatting with me. At CPA Moms, we believe women can have a successful career and raise a happy family. If you are ready to embrace work-life harmony and connect with like-hearted women, then please come join our Facebook community. You can just click the link in the show notes or search CPA Moms on Facebook. We cannot wait to welcome you. Until next time, thank you for being here. We see you, we believe in you, and we cannot wait to grow with you.